We've been warning for a couple of days now that if essential public services and humanitarian aid could not be provided to the population in a sustained way, we would see a breakdown in civil order. What we are seeing right now is the first stages of that. And of course, some of our logistic bases were looted by hundreds of young men. So it is a very worrying sign that the fabric of society is starting to break down. So we are very concerned about the safety of Palestinians, but also our ability to maintain our operations here in Gaza.
Well, let's talk about that. Describe those operations on the ground. You are there, you are witnessing what has been described as a humanitarian catastrophe. Just explain what you are seeing through your own eyes here.
We have, get them basic sanitation. We are rationing food that we are providing to these people. Water supplies are becoming very limited. But the other major concern is that nowhere in Gaza is safe. There is nowhere to flee to. There is nowhere to run to. Even in our schools that we are sheltering internally displaced people, we've had 5 direct hits. It's cost the lives of 17 people. 281 have been injured, and I'm getting reports tonight that another school has been hit by fire. So supplies are very short, which means people are going without, and essentially they've got nowhere to flee to, they've got nowhere to run. They are scared for their lives.
I need to get your analysis of what is going on in the north, particularly with these warnings by the Israelis of a possible strike on the Al-Quds hospital. I mean, the WHO chief has called reports of Israeli forces threatening that Gaza hospital as deeply concerning. He says, "We reiterate it is impossible to evacuate hospitals full of patients without endangering their lives." You will tell us that those hospitals are also sheltering thousands of people. That specific hospital, as we understand it, has got some 14,000 people sheltering in it. I mean, what's your response to those reports that they are being warned that they could be struck?
Essentially, these hospitals should be protected under international law, and the patients and the people sheltering there should be protected. I was in Gaza City about 2 days ago, and I visited some of the hospitals, and I can confirm there are hundreds and hundreds of patients and thousands of internally displaced people taking shelter in these locations. We also have shelters in the north. We've lost contact with the people sheltering there and some of our staff, and we are very concerned that in these shelters you can have up to 1,500 people sheltering in a school. We are reminding the Israelis of their obligations under international law, that these people should be protected. But I'm very concerned that we will get no guarantees that people sheltering under a UN flag will be safe.
The head of your organisation, Philippe Lazzarini, has called for a durable and sustained immediate ceasefire, humanitarian pause, call it what you will. And I say that because there's always such argument over sort of the diplomatic language. But let's call this a humanitarian pause. That is what he is calling for. That is what this region that I am in here, and I'm in Qatar today, is calling for. They have roundly condemned Israel's latest escalation in this ground war. The head of your organisation will speak, as I understand it from diplomatic sources, at an emergency UN Security Council meeting tomorrow. What's the message here to the outside world? 120 countries at the UN General Assembly on Friday called for an immediate ceasefire. That hasn't happened. It was rejected, not voted for by the United States, and 44 other countries abstain. We haven't been able to get a UN resolution passed at the amongst the P5. What's your message here?
Speaking from Gaza, we desperately need a humanitarian ceasefire. This is the only way that I can see that we will be able to ease the tension within the community here. It's the only way that we can, in a sustainable way, get assistance to people in need. People desperately want an end to this conflict, and our ability to serve them is dependent on essentially a humanitarian ceasefire, which will enable the situation to stabilise, enable us to get humanitarian assistance to people. But really, most importantly, we need the public sector to be operating. We also need the private sector to be operating, particularly in the public sector. They are on the brink of collapse. They are pumping the water. They are pumping the sewage out of the cities. They are removing waste in the cities. They're on the verge of collapse. So we really need a humanitarian ceasefire to allow us to get the assistance that people need and stabilise society here in Gaza.